Hey everyone, my name is Rob Case. Welcome back to the Dropping In Surf Show, where we do our best to merge math and science into the world of surfing. I'm a paddling technique coach located in Northern California, and in this episode, I had the honor to sit down with a friend and mentor, Amber Puha. Now, I've known Amber for say just over 22 years. And she is one of the most remarkable and interesting humans I know. Personally, she's been a mentor to me in mathematics, in teaching, in surfing, and just in general, just chasing your passion. So I'm just going to get right to it. Please enjoy my conversation with the current department chair of mathematics at California State University, San Marcos, Amber Puha. So why don't we start with your role at CSU San Marcos? What is your role there?
So I'm a faculty member in the Department of Mathematics. This is my 23rd year there.
That's insane.
I'm a full professor these days and taking my turn as department chair. So I have a lot of administrative duties at the moment.
You still teach classes though?
Well, I'm teaching one class.
What is it?
It's called Introduction to the Mathematics of Finance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun class. So it is based on the Nobel Prize winning work of Myron Scholes, Fisher Black, and Robert Merton.
Yep.
So they're very famous for the Black-Scholes equation.
Yeah.
This is usually taught more at the graduate level, but I was on sabbatical at UCSD, and a long time ago, and Ruth Williams there had kind of begun to figure out a way to do this using more elementary tools that could be more accessible to undergrads.
Mm-hmm.
And I really loved it. So we do a simplified version of that.
Yeah.
And the students really get a lot out of the course. They find it very fun that such rich mathematics ended up making such a significant contribution to an application.
Yeah.
Actually, this formula, when it appeared out of the work of these three geniuses, actually revolutionized trading on financial markets.
Yeah.
So it was very impactful, and I think that for undergraduates to see that and to be able to get a little feel for that, it's really, really a great course. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of fun teaching this one.
Yeah, I think applied math kind of has that road into interests, whereas pure math, which is what I did, was a little bit more pie in the sky. It was harder, and that's why I was always visiting you like, how does this apply? I remember I did Black-Scholes in grad school. I didn't even do it as an undergrad.
Oh, okay.
So that's
so I don't really get to the
awesome.
full Black-Scholes equation.
Yeah.
This is all discrete time, discrete state models.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't get to the full equation, but a lot of the same theory is there, and the students learn a lot of probabilistic modeling.
Yeah.
So it's a fun course. It's a kind of a challenging semester right now.
For you or
for
the everybody?
Students.
Okay.
Right. We're just starting face to face after the whole COVID shutdown.
Yeah.
Bringing everybody back to campus.
Yeah.
When we came back, we had the Delta variant. Things were a little crazy, and just dealing with all the issues around making sure our whole campus community is vaccinated or has an approved exemption. Mm-hmm. And so it's been a little wild.
Yeah.
But a lot of the students have anxiety and just from so much time away from normal life.
Yeah.
Some mental health issues that they're navigating, and some depression, things like that.
Right.
So it's a pretty sensitive time. But I think most of us are like, okay, we made it back. I mean, we've been back for like 6 or 7 weeks now, and that's just been great.
Right.
I think people feel really optimistic for spring semester. I think more and more of our classes will have ever larger face-to-face components. Mine's hybrid, teaching by Zoom on Mondays and in person on Wednesdays. That was very intentional. I think with a mathematics course, it's really, that in-person contact and help and that personal attention is so important. So I wanted to try it. Not all the faculty are doing that, and it is an interesting time for our students. But I think we'll see much greater fractions of our classes come back face to face in spring.
Yeah. It's interesting. You said 23 years at San Marcos. I'm wondering, at one point in your life were you like, math, I like this, right? Like, when did it happen?
So I've always been very good at mathematics, and I've been more average, say, in the language arts and in English and writing and things. And so my mom recognized that I was good at mathematics in elementary school.
Oh, wow.
And she's a teacher. She's an early childhood reading expert. But she kind of had to push to let me do a little bit more advanced work at that time. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of a theme through my whole K-12 experience. And I think it was because I didn't really fit the profile, right? Girls are supposed to be good in the language arts, and they're not supposed to be good in math and science. Right. And so, you're just kind of average over here. So even though you're good over there, you better work on that, because that's what's for girls. Mm-hmm. And I think that really delayed my enthusiasm for math. So I was always super good at it, and my math teachers definitely recognized that. Mm-hmm. In fact, my high school geometry teacher, Mr. Poole, from Texas, he always used to call me up to the board and say, "Amber, show them how to do it."
Nice.
And
it's a pretty good Texas accent.
And I love Mr. Poole. So I wasn't super challenged. Yeah. And so I was surfing and putting a lot of effort into other areas of my life. Mm-hmm. And around the time I turned 20, I was going to community college a little bit, and around the time I turned 20, I got back to taking some math classes at the community college. And that's when I started taking calculus. Mm-hmm. And sort of the geometry and the algebra coming together, doing this more sophisticated analysis of things. I really got excited about it. And that's when I decided to major in mathematics.
Was it like a fascination into it, or were you challenged to the point where you're like, oh, this is really hard and I want to push myself? Because you weren't challenged before.
I wasn't as challenged. I mean, it wasn't just that. It was like, wow, this is beautiful. All of this is related. It's not like this isolated thing, like you do this over here and then you go home and solve for X, and right? And now you have this function and you have this graph and everything is connected and you can look at its rates of change. And I just found it really fascinating. That's really, I would say that's when I got more like hooked, like, hey, I think I'm going to major in math. So I was doing that at the community college and preparing to transfer. Yeah. I transferred to UCSD after I finished at the community college. And I kind of thought maybe I would try to teach at the community college. Maybe I would get a master's degree. Mm-hmm. That was sort of the plan, although I didn't have it fully hashed out. I was just doing what I like, still surfing, and living my life. I had been with my now husband for a long time. I mean, we met about the time I turned 20, so we were on this journey together. At that time, he was honing his craft to become a surfboard builder, and I was going to school and figuring out what I wanted to do. And my second quarter at UCSD, I had a probability class. I loved all my classes, but the professor was Ruth Williams, and she said, hey, there's a summer program called the Howard Hughes something or other research summer program for students. And if anybody's interested in doing that in the summer, maybe they could talk to me. And I actually approached it. I thought, this is great. I could get paid to do math. Maybe I can quit my waiting tables job.
That's awesome.
And so I I did ask somebody else first, and they said, oh, yeah, undergrad, you should probably just take an extra class or something if you like math.
Right.
I was like, okay. So then I went and talked to her about it, and she had assigned us a paper to write on basically law of large numbers type stuff and central limit theorem type stuff. And she read that paper first, and then my work on that, and then she got back to me and she said yes. And so my relationship, she's been a significant mentor in my life, and my relationship with her continues to this day, actually. And that was the pivot point where I was like, I'm going to get a PhD in math.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, time working with her, but over that time, that's where.
So you finished up at UCSD and then you went to UCLA.
Yeah, I finished at UCSD in '93. I got there in '91, and it was a really fantastic 2 years between. It was a great time to be at UCSD as an undergraduate. It was, still kind of small. All of my upper division, you were there then, and about that time. Small. And all of my classes, they didn't have any more than like 35 students in it in the upper division math classes. Right. And you really got to know the professors if you wanted to. And I always went to their office hours. So that was a special time. I've been back there on sabbatical. Actually, last year, I taught this math finance course. Yeah. With 150 students in it.
Wow.
So that just shows the dynamic of how much they've grown and everything that's going. That was quite an interesting experience because about a third of them were overseas, and just because it was remote.
Yeah, right.
So it was pretty interesting. But I always love going back to UCSD for this, that, or the other thing. It's kind of a second home for me.
Well, I didn't know you were there as an undergrad because when you were there for your postdoc, that's when I went.
That's when you were there.
That's when I was there.
Okay, so that's when I came back. I love it there. I keep coming back whenever I can.
It's a great school.
Yeah.
So UCLA was your master's and PhD?
Yeah.
Okay. And then postdoc back at UCSD, and then a role at CSU San Marcos.
Yeah, that's right.
Was that something that you sought out at CSU San Marcos specifically, like that school and that program you wanted to be a part of?
Well, I think right. You have how many universities are there? I want to be a surfer.
Right.
So locations definitely played a key factor in my choice to choose Cal State San Marcos.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of other great reasons why I think it's a really good fit for me. One is I really love teaching, and I also absolutely love research. And this is a place where balance is really appreciated. Mm-hmm. So our teaching load is moderate, but it's not over the top heavy to where you can't engage in research. But on the flip side, I still have, for the most part, pretty small classes. Mm-hmm. I know all of my students, and the teaching experience is particularly rewarding. Yeah. So between the combination of just being from North San Diego County and what the balance that they had to offer, and just having that opportunity not to be 100% like the only thing I do is teach, or having such maybe a high expectation for research, and you don't get to engage in the teaching in the way that it's maybe as rewarding as you would like. Yeah. It's really a good fit for me.
Obviously it's a good fit. You've been there for 23 years.
Yeah.
Still continues to be a good fit. At one point early on, I mean, you were at kind of the pro level for surfing. So
there was a decision
a decision that needed to be made.
Yeah.
So what kind of went into that?
Yeah, so during high school, I was surfing a lot, surfing competitions on the West Coast. This would be sort of late 80s. Mm-hmm. And it was a really challenging time to be a female surfer. So at that time, there was that Lisa Anderson was doing the amateur circuit, and she went on to really help change the face of women surfing, right? Mm-hmm. So she was doing the amateur circuit with myself. Actually, the two ladies who direct the NSSA these days, Janice Aragon and Gayleen Clifford.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nea Post was in there with us, and Janelle Anello, and many others. It was a fun group, and I definitely was pushing myself toward that direction.
Yeah.
I had a certain amount of success doing the competitions, and it was something I was very focused on and planning for. But at some point, I just really had to step back from it and look at what is the long term.
Yeah.
As a woman in surfing. And I ended up, I finished my amateur career, and I started trying to travel to do the contests, and of course you have to pay your own way. There's not a lot of sponsorship. So I was working a lot to do that. And I ended up in Japan at the same place that world champ Frida Zambo was staying, and that was kind of nice. We had a lot of conversations, and it was Japan, so you would sit on the ground and eat together, and so it was pretty cool. But I just really looked at, she had her first sponsor of her whole career at that point, and
had she won a world title at that point?
Yep.
How many?
I don't remember now. Okay. But I just kind of looked at that and I thought, well. And then what will you do after?
Right.
What opportunities are there? How will you pay your bills? And it just seemed very limiting at that moment in time. Yeah. And so I just made a decision that for me personally, it was time to go back to college. And I was about 20 at that point, and that's when I really got into my studies at Miracosta.
That's crazy, because it's all about the environment that you're in that moment in time. And you talked about how even in mathematics, women at the time were seen as inferior in mathematics, right? And you butted that rule. And
there was more opportunity in that direction, right? So this is...
And I wouldn't consider it that much more opportunity, considering the environment that women in mathematics were in at the time.
Well, and sometimes still are, but there's certainly a lot more protections, right? So if you're say a high school teacher, mm-hmm. you certainly have rights,
right?
And you're working in a school district, and there's rules, and people can't treat you in certain ways, and
but surfing was more Wild West back then.
Yeah,
in a sense.
And there was a lot of, I think nationally there was, right, Title IX was sort of coming into full effect, mm-hmm. and that meant, right, that women's sports were being pushed out on college campuses because we had to spend equal dollars on women's athletics and men's athletics, mm-hmm. and there was a real strong perception that all women who were athletic were lesbians, and so there were just a lot of things circulating around being, and honestly, if you look back at that time, the guys too were really challenged financially. Yeah, they had it better off than the women, right. but they were still really challenged financially. So it's like everybody's fighting for these really small resources. Mm-hmm. And in an environment like that, it's quite hard to be generous and do the right thing sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was super. I mean, I love being a surfer. Yeah. And I am so happy that's such a significant part of my life. And I get so much reward out of going surfing and being in the water and doing everything that I do in that realm. But I'm definitely glad it's not where I hang my professional hat. Yeah. And I'm excited for everything the ladies have accomplished. Mm-hmm. I mean, to be the first women's sport to have equal pay, I didn't think that would happen in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. So that's incredible. Yeah. And just to see like the level that these young ladies are surfing at. Mm-hmm. I mean, now I go surfing and Caitlin Simmers is out there in the water with me right here in Oceanside, and I'm just looking at what she's doing going, wow. Yeah. So it's pretty awesome how much more opportunity there is there for the ladies, and it's good to see that there's just more opportunity in surfing for everybody. Yeah. So So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it's, given that situation that you were in, you had talents elsewhere that had a road ahead. It seems to me like that would be the route. When someone doesn't have those options, they're focused on that one thing. They're forced into that road, and they try to make the best that they can. So the women that did go that route really, paved that way and struggled through it. But they probably didn't have many other options, right?
Maybe not. Sometimes people don't always do the logical thing. They follow their heart.
Yeah.
Or maybe they have other support.
Yeah.
And so they're able to go say, hey, or maybe they trust that when they're done being a professional surfer, that there will be other things there for them. I really always wanted to be someone who could take care of myself.
Yeah. And you had a strong role model with your mom teaching as well, and
absolutely,
that plays a huge role in the direction that we end up in.
Definitely.
I got more questions for you. Hold on. Like I said, I'm a notes. Oh yeah, so switching over to the CSU surf team, CSU San Marcos surf team. What's your role with the team?
I'm the faculty advisor. So
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, we'll go into that. So I had made this choice right when I was 20. I'm gonna go to college. This is the better route for me. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna surf. I'm gonna be a surfer, but I'm not gonna follow the pro surfer route. So I hadn't done much competition for a while, and then I transferred to UCSD, and then I joined the surf team. Mm-hmm. I was on the team with a super great group of people: Chuck Golden, Dan Spurn, Miguel Kagan, the Doonan brothers, Justin Penny, and the girls, Chrissy Jenkins and Tara Larkin. It was a super great synergy, and it was just really wonderful to be around all these intellectual surfers.
Right.
So it was such a significant part of my experience as a student at UCSD that when I got my job at Cal State San Marcos so many years later, that I would connect with the surfers, and we would try to get a surf team going. Mm-hmm. So
they didn't have one at all before you.
Well, they were kind of doing it just on the side underground. I think that
every once in a while,
some people would pull together, but I don't think that the actual the campus knew they were doing it, mm-hmm. right? Which is sort of a little bit of an issue. So that was, when I joined the faculty at Cal State San Marcos, the university was 10 years old, and it was largely a commuter campus. Mm-hmm. They hadn't had freshmen. They started off as just juniors and seniors.
Okay.
And then partway through, maybe 96, they started having freshmen. Yeah. And so the average age on campus when I was hired was like 28.
Wow.
And, I had really just finished my postdoc, and I was in my early 30s. So there really wasn't a big difference between me and them. We were just, right? So I pretty much knew all the surfers on campus, and I used to surf with everybody. So, and then the timing was that they were going to open their first set of on-campus housing for freshmen. Mm-hmm. And they were realizing you can't just bring freshmen to campus without having social life and activities for them. Mm-hmm. That could be a disaster. So they were looking for things. And so I approached Associated Students with, hey, well, why don't we do a surf team? And I banded the students together, and there was a little drama associated with it, but we did manage to get things going, and it was officially recognized in 2002, January. Okay. And I guess I've been through about 6 different directors along the way that have overseen the sport clubs in some fashion. Yeah. In different units on campus as they move around and reorganize and figure out what's the best way. But yeah, it's been a super lot of fun. So it started out like me being their peer in some sense.
Right.
And they would all come over here, and we'd have a barbecue, and we'd do all kinds of surf and hang out. And then as I got older, and the age of the kids got younger, and they weren't commuter students. They weren't past their whole party. They wanted to have a beer and do other things, and yeah, I can't do that. Right. and so they don't come over to my house and have their social gatherings so much anymore. But we just had practice at the beach at the harbor today. Super cool.
So then, as advisor, you're not the coach.
Nope.
But you do you organize? Do you guide these students?
Absolutely. I mean, so I think if I was the coach, I would actually have to have a different role, and I would have to have some liability insurance and some other things. Right. And so I'm really more, they coach themselves. Okay. But I play the role of the faculty advisor. I help them organize things, give them advice, make some suggestions. So sometimes when I think they might not make a good decision, like, hey, you might want to think about that. The repercussions of that might not be
many people under the age of 25 need some guidance.
Yeah,
in that area, for sure.
But it's been a lot of fun. So so we started out with one team, and the evolution over time has it's grown. The level of talent on the team fluctuates. We're a little bit inland, so it's not like Santa Barbara or UCSD where you're just attracting this pool of talent.
But you guys took the championship how many years? 2?
We have 2 national titles.
There you go.
So that was exciting. The first one came in 2009, and that was a really special one because it consisted of a core group of kids who had come, that actually live in Vista, but were sort of surfing Oceanside all the time. And that was Scotty McBride, Aaron Coyle, a kid from San Clemente, Chris Smith, Garrett James was on that team. I feel like I'm missing one or two more people. I want to say Sunshine was on that team.
Really?
Yeah, Sunshine Macro maybe.
We'll have to hit her up and confirm that.
And Lauren Nutter. Yeah, it was a fun crew. And actually, as it turns out, I in those days I would be on the beach for every single event.
Yeah.
But I had a conference I had to go to for that one, and I was actually in China.
When they won the national title.
Yeah. And I got a text message when I woke up in the morning that they had just won.
That's
which
awesome.
was super awesome. And it was kind of exciting. It was a tiebreaker with a school in North Carolina. And they had to each send 3 surfers out in the water and see who was going to take this thing.
Wow.
And they had some strategy involved because the North Carolina had these 2 guys that were just really exceptionally good surfers.
Yeah.
And I think the strategy was that Aaron, I think he went out and picked up just 2 quick waves and then just tried to sit on those guys. Like anchor. And yeah, so it was super fun. So that was really neat. And they were really good the next year. Yeah. But they didn't quite rise to that special moment. I mean, those moments, they're almost there and then they're not, right? You can ask Lakey about that, poor thing, or Sally Fitzgibbons, right? Right? You're right on the precipice, so and it just, yeah. So then it was kind of we had some really fun things we did in the meantime, but just kind of averaging the talent level, and then just something came together in 2018, 2019, and we just had a super amazing group of talented kids. Yeah. And
was that the one GC was on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, GC, and let's see, I'm trying to think. GC, Shane Freiberger. He's an Encinitas kid. He was the president. Really Evan Sanderson, Micah Crozier, and let's see, Jake Tuso was doing the longboarding for us. We had Maya Salino in the women's.
Okay.
Yeah, she was just really, really solid. And I think Janine Rayner was her +1 in that division. I mean, it was just a really magical team.
Yeah.
And super, super cool. But so a lot of them have graduated. But the funny thing is, GC's back.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's on this year. We had a dead year for for the pandemic. Oh, I know another one. Kevin Blanky was on that national title team. He's in St. Clemente kid. So So the funny thing is we have the pandemic and then there's no competition. And so last year nothing happened. And they didn't, but when we got the shutdown, when the pandemic first came in spring 2020, there was no national championship that year. And then the year after, completely no college team season, nothing. So we're still the reigning national champs.
Yeah.
And GC's back. He's in the teacher credential program.
Awesome.
And
I see that for sure.
And Kevin Blanky's back. He's in the teacher credential program.
That's awesome.
So those two guys are, it's fun to have them back around. But yeah, we got a new crew. Otherwise, I like really, really super good energy. Some of the carryovers, the president, Will Duncan, is from the other team. And we got a new kid in there for VP treasurer, Trevor Stalker. And we got a local girl in there on the officer, Peyton Kemp.
Nice.
So these three really have a good working relationship, and so we're going to see what happens this year.
Yeah.
Fun stuff.
One of the most interesting conversations we had a couple of years ago, we were having burritos and talking about how you help the surfers more than just, organization and probably heat strategy. I'm sure you give them hints on that, but how do you help these students become more than just a championship surf team?
Yeah, so they definitely, right, this process of putting together this team, it's not just like, let's show up at the beach and do this, right? To actually organize a team through campus, through club sports, there are a lot of levels of organization that have to be planned for, and probably, budget is a big one.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to be looking out for, like, how do I get this done? I got to get these things done in this order, and I have to plan for this, and we can't just expect everything to be there for us when we're ready to do it. We have to think ahead.
Right.
So it's really about teaching them how to be leaders and giving them a little bit of support in that direction. I remember one of the presidents was so upset because he would try to call practice, and there was this other kid in the background who was like really talented surfer, and that one would text everybody and say, no, we're going to go here. And he felt really undermined by him, like, why are you, I'm the president, So we had a lot of conversations around that, and I was like, well, sometimes if you got to bring your enemies close. So let's go. So let's go talk to him, and let's see if we can get him in a leadership role.
Yeah.
And let's see if we can get you guys working together and on the same page.
Right.
And if we can't, let's just talk to him about how that affects the team synergy when there's all this strife. And if he's not willing to do the officer work, then be a supporter. So things like that come up, dynamics that you have to deal with at work all the time, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's huge because even adults don't know how to handle situations like that sometimes because they've never run into those situations as kids growing up or in organizations like this. So it's not even, it's entrepreneurship, it's leadership, because they need to be self-starters at a smaller school that doesn't have, in a sport that doesn't have a big budget, that doesn't have an organized kind of sport like a soccer or football or baseball, where when you play that, everything's kind of taken care of you. You don't need to self-start and organize things. In a sense.
I think it probably depends on where your sport is housed.
Yeah.
Right. So if your sport is housed in athletics, your job is to show up, right?
Right.
You just show up and play. Everything's got a coach there, all everything you need. You've got your bus, everything's organized,
Right.
your hotels are set, right? Nothing to, I mean, when these kids are doing the club sport, they have so much responsibility. And that applies to things like field hockey, our volleyball, club sports. So they face those challenges, and then they have the added thing of trying to get field space and coordinating everything with their schedules in terms of, okay, who are we going to play against, and what field space can we get to get those? So they can't just they don't just plug in.
Right.
So surf, I would say, is somewhere in the middle of that. They do have already NSSA, and so their competition schedule is set. So in that sense, that part of it isn't such a challenge for them like some of these other club sports.
Right.
But on the flip side, they have to manage the whole thing themselves, and that's not. I don't manage it; they manage it. I just help them. Depends on the style, the leadership, how good they are about dates and stuff.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to plug all the dates in my phone, and then I
Just
have
as a
to text them.
Like, reminder.
You have a meeting tonight.
Yeah.
You better be there. But other times, usually we manage to find students that can handle that and can be where they need to be.
One could argue that somebody that's in an organized athletics sport doesn't get as well-rounded education as someone in club sports in that sense, because the club sports need to do more than just play the sport.
Oh yeah.
They have to organize it, and they have to be passionate. They have to be so passionate about it that all that headache that they have to go through is worth it.
Right.
Right. And I just see that as a better overall education coming out of the program.
It's certainly enriching.
Yeah.
And I've had one or two that want to do it just for the resume line item to say it, but they don't really want to put in the work for it. But usually the people that step forward to do it do a pretty good job. And we've been really fortunate in that regard. I was kind of, the Shane and Maya duo in the previous years was just so strong. I was like, how are we going to follow this up? I'm going to have to step in
You're
here.
sitting back drinking Mai Tais, and then you're like, oh wait, they're leaving.
But this is great. I'm really excited for this group. They're doing a good job. And with Peyton just being a freshman, I think hopefully she'll stick around in there, and we can, as Will and Trevor, graduate, get closer to graduating, and we bring some more in on it. But yeah, it'll be fun. Yeah, practice today was really nice. We had to call an audible. They had it planned for the Rock in Oceanside, and the tide was just so high. And there's no beach.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, we better. What do you think, Will? So we ended up at the harbor.
Yeah.
It was super fun.
And how to practice? I'm just curious how practices go. Is it, all right, let's do heat work? Is it, how does that all work?
There have been teams that want to work on their heats.
Yeah.
And especially, it's been a while now, but you remember when Brad Gerlach had the game?
Yeah.
And there was talk of having the game for colleges.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And everybody was so fired up on that that they wanted to try to start practicing that format, because people said it was going to happen. I think Reef was going to sponsor it, and there was going to be this West Coast college game. And then Haleiwa opened up on the schedule, and Reef jumped in on that.
Right.
And then that went but they were really fired up on it then.
Yeah.
So that was super fun. But typically, really, they just want to get together to surf.
Yeah.
So it's not usually an intense thing.
It's funny you say that, because I find, and I'm not a competitive surfer by any means, but I find that when I do a mock heat with a friend, and even my clients in my level 2 course, I'll say, all right, we're doing 20 minutes, catch more waves than me. And if you can catch twice as many waves or half as many waves as me, then you win. And I'll modify it based on their level. When we have that goal, it's man, we're catching waves like crazy. When we don't have that goal, it's so mosey. It's like back to the whole like, oh, I'm out in the ocean. This is a lot of fun. So
I don't know. They seem to catch a lot of waves.
well, I was gonna say like
I arrived to practice early so I can get some waves before they paddle out there. I don't want to surf with 25 of them.
they don't have any problem with motivation. Then that's good. Speaking of you paddling out and catching waves, and back to the math, do you ever think of math and surfing? Like, do you ever cross that when you're sitting out and you see a wave and you're like, oh, I wonder what the rate of change of that wave is? Or is it?
Sometimes when I don't, like right now I have a huge amount of administrative responsibility.
Yeah.
So my mind is kind of churning on all those silly little problems that I have to solve that are not very mathematical. But I mean, I'm always thinking about mathematics.
Yeah.
I
was wondering about that because you're in mathematics all the time, and when you go surf, do you want to turn it off, or it's just creep in?
So really, I think if you talk to anybody who works on difficult or scientific problems, the way these things tend to work is, you're thinking about it very deeply. Mm-hmm. You understand the issues. You're sitting at your desk, hammering your head against it. You're reading everything. You've gone through the equations. You've gone through the processes so many times. It's like the back of your hand. Mm-hmm. And then you go do something else, and that's when you have your epiphany. That's when you have your idea that's going to make everything work. And so that can sometimes happen when you're surfing, or if you're having, depending on the circumstances, if you're kind of having one of those chill sessions where you're just everything's relaxed. But it's not so common in Southern California anymore, right? There's a lot of people in the water.
Yeah, there's a lot to keep your mind off of
everything.
The abstract and
yeah.
Any probability strategies for your students for their heats?
Maybe not so formally, but I mean, right? You definitely gotta watch the lineup before. Mm-hmm. You got to know where the waves are coming in, and you got to have some sort of a game plan.
Right.
Right, because
rhythm of the ocean. So say someone has 5 minutes left, they need a 4, and waves are coming every 8 minutes.
Right.
You got to make a decision, right? Do you wait, and hope it comes early? What's the probability of that versus?
Yeah.
Can I get a 4 on these little dribblers that are coming through?
Would be super individual, right?
Yeah.
In terms of the particulars of that surfer, right. Circumstances of the heat, who's in the heat with you, that sort of thing.
Just like any probability problem, right?
Yeah.
and that's the funny thing is that I think when I talk to people about math and surfing, they're like, "Oh, I'm not good at math," and I'm like, "Dude, your brain is a huge computer computing things all the time. You're doing calculus, you're doing probability, you're doing geometry, you're doing algebra, you're doing everything." And you don't even know it.
Right.
Right? And so you put it in your academic area into a more formal way, and then you try to share it with others and say, look, see, everything's connected. Yeah. Right? These things are all connected, and that's cool. Whereas somebody that's not open-minded is like, no, the math's not for me. I think that's so cool. So
yeah,
I'm in awe with that.
People are usually, you don't usually get. So one thing I've observed just from being a mathematician is it elicits a very strong response in people.
Yes, polarizing.
And I find it a little discomforting. Like if you came up to me and you said, "Hey, I'm a golfer." "Oh, I hate golf." You know, that's just rude, isn't it?
Totally.
It's just socially unacceptable, right? You just go, "Oh, that's kind of cool. Okay, I haven't really played," or right? But you don't just bag on somebody's like you don't just come out and yell at them like, "I hate that." And people, this doesn't occur to people like that's. Right. So I find that kind of interesting about being a mathematician. But I was talking about my advanced class that I teach, and I do teach a lot more advanced classes these days just because hiring wise, the tenure track faculty have a lower density. So to cover our majors courses and to cover our grad courses, it's usually the tenure track faculty that have to do that, and it doesn't allow me to teach the lower level stuff as much. But I have just as much fun teaching general education Math 100.
Yeah.
Which is our math for arts majors, basically, on campus. I love that class. It's beautiful. Yeah. And sometimes when I can just share those big ideas with students, it's really exciting and a lot of fun. Yeah. In that class, one of the fun topics is about the different sizes of infinity. And you can try to explain the difference between being countable and uncountable. So countable being something like the natural numbers. There's infinitely many counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, keeps going. But that's one size of infinity. But now if you think about all real numbers, just any number, all the rational ones, all the irrational ones, pi, e, every number on the number line, that actually can be quantified, that is infinite, but it's of a bigger size of infinity.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the really fun things that, for example, I like teaching and trying to teach in a non-technical way without really using any mathematics notation.
Yeah.
So I do like teaching the lower level classes. I have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
Don't get to do it as much.
Well, they're lucky to have you as a teacher, I'll tell you that. That's awesome. So thank you for sharing your story and your time. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for having me.